So, have you ever wondered why an insect sting gets just so incredibly itchy? Or, kind of weirdly, what that annoying itch could possibly have in common with how your stomach digests a meal? Well, the answer actually lies in a highly complex master communicator that's working constantly, right this second, inside your body.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're zooming in on histamine. Now, I know what you're thinking. Most of us just know histamine as that pesky allergy chemical that we try to block with antihistamines when spring rolls around. But as you'll see today, it's actually this fascinating, multitasking molecule that orchestrates an absolutely wild variety of physiological functions across your entire system.
Here is the roadmap for our molecular tour today. First, we'll ask, what are histamine receptors? Then we'll look at H1 and its link to allergies and sleep, followed by H2 and gastric acid secretion. After that, we'll check out H3's role in neurotransmitter regulation and H4's job in immune system chemotaxis. Finally, we'll wrap up with exactly how histamine triggers all these responses.
All right, Section 1. What are histamine receptors? The body's cellular receivers.
Okay, let's dive into this. Histamine doesn't just float around making things happen magically. It communicates by binding to specific cellular receivers, kind of like a key fitting perfectly into a lock. We've basically got four main characters here: H1, H2, H3, and H4. As you can see on this table, they live in completely different neighborhoods of your body, from your smooth muscles all the way to your bone marrow, and they perform entirely different primary functions. Let's meet the first one.
Section 2. H1. Allergies and sleep. The allergy alarm.
So the H1 receptor is basically your body's allergy alarm. It hangs out on smooth muscles, your endothelium, and in your central nervous system. When histamine hits these specific receptors, boom, the reaction is rapid. It causes vasodilation, which is just a fancy way of saying it widens your blood vessels, and bronchoconstriction, which tightens your airways. It even physically separates endothelial cells, which is literally the precise biological reaction that gives you hives. H1 is the main culprit behind the pain of that insect sting we talked about, the sneezing of allergic rhinitis, and yep, even motion sickness. But believe it or not, when it's not triggering those intense reactions, it calmly helps regulate your sleep.
Moving on to Section 3. H2. Gastric acid secretion. The acid pump.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast between H1 and H2. H2 operates in a totally different environment, specifically on the parietal cells in your stomach. Its primary job? Acting as your body's stomach acid pump to stimulate gastric acid. So the exact same molecule that makes you sneeze and break out in hives is also absolutely essential for digesting your food. It's wild, right? And this, by the way, is exactly why certain antacid drugs are designed specifically to target and block this H2 receptor.
Next up, Section 4, H3, Neurotransmitter Regulation, the brake pedal.
The H3 receptor is found primarily in your nervous system, and it brilliantly illustrates a completely different type of function. Instead of stimulating a reaction, H3 acts more like the brain's brake pedal. When it's activated, it actually decreases the release of several key neurotransmitters. We're talking histamine itself, serotonin, acetylcholine, and norepinephrine. Basically, it keeps your nervous system perfectly balanced by putting the brakes on when things get a little too active.
Section 5, H4, Immune System Chemotaxis, the traffic cop.
Our final character, H4, is found primarily in basophils, bone marrow, your thymus, and a few other places like the spleen and colon. Its main role is tied to a really cool process called chemotaxis. Now, chemotaxis is simply when cells direct their movement based on certain chemicals in their environment. So think of H4 as an immune traffic cop. It reads the chemical signals around it and directs your immune cells exactly where they need to go.
Section 6. How histamine triggers responses. The master mechanism. Let's move to and see how this builds into a complete physiological response. It all happens in 3 elegant sequential steps. Step 1 is binding. This is where those histamine molecules locate and bind to the specific H1, H2, H3, or H4 receptors we just mapped out. Step 2 is triggering responses. The exact moment of receptor activation leads to localized, specific reactions. And then step 3, which is the truly profound part, is signaling pathways. This initial binding activates deep, cascading pathways that fundamentally change cellular activity, physiological responses, and even gene expression. To put this 3-step mechanism into a real-world perspective, let's look at an allergic reaction again.
When histamine binds to that H1 receptor, that triggering step instantly leads to increased mucus production, smooth muscle contraction, and vasodilation. That cascading signaling pathway is the exact reason you experience that sudden itching, a crazy fit of sneezing, or frustrating sinus congestion the second pollen hits your nose.
But as we've learned today, it's really not all about the sneezes and the hives. The crucial point is this. While H1 and H2 are busy on the front lines dealing with allergies and digestion, your H3 and H4 receptors are working quietly behind the scenes. They are absolutely vital for regulating the release of histamine itself and constantly modulating your underlying immune responses. They're the ones keeping the entire biological symphony in check.
Which brings us to a fascinating final thought. If a single molecule like histamine, acting through literally just 4 tiny receptors, can drastically alter your cellular activity, change your gene expression, and direct massive bodily functions every single second, what else is your invisible biology orchestrating right now, without you even knowing it? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep wondering, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.